So this video is for GCSE Business Studies and its operations with regards to procurement and supply chain. So a few years ago I was reading an article in The Guardian, and it was all about tennis balls that are used in Wimbledon, the tennis tournament. And it was looking at how globalization has impacted production. And with regards to just simply the tennis balls that are used at Wimbledon, we can see all the different continents and the countries in those continents that are needed with regards to the extraction or the resources that are required just simply to manufacture a tennis ball. So if we break this down, we can see, for example, sulfur needed from South Korea, rubber from Malaysia, glue from the Philippines, the wool from New Zealand. And I suppose with global trade as it is today, it has become much more complicated than manufacturing and the production of a good. And what we might need is resources and inputs from all over the world. And that can obviously be very, very difficult to, I suppose, negotiate and to organise. And what that will require is a procurement and a logistics team. The procurement is involved with, I suppose, approaching all these suppliers across the world and negotiating prices with those suppliers to obviously buy those supplies. And the logistical team is then making sure that these resources arrive on time and when needed. So again, from this article, I started to think about other products, and I started to delve into maybe more technical products than a tennis ball, such as, for example, a smartphone, and I wanted to delve into Apple.
The design of every new iPhone starts here, at Apple's headquarters in Cupertino, California, by a team of industrial designers. But the resources needed to make this design a reality come from all over the world. Apple largely depends on outside manufacturers to produce ready-made components for its devices. The company's supply chain is incredibly complex and far-reaching. Apple works with suppliers in 43 countries and 6 continents to make all of its products. Each year, Apple publishes a broad list of suppliers, but the company does not specify which components come from which manufacturers, and they will often use more than one supplier for a part on the same model.
So as you could see from the Apple video, they buy ready-made components from suppliers all over the world, and I did mention that their supply chain can be very, very complex. So what is meant by a supply chain? Simply, all a supply chain is the journey of the product. So it's looking at how the product was made and how it gets to the end consumer. So it'll delve into where the raw materials were extracted from, how it got to the supplier, how the supplies then got to the manufacturer in terms of how it was manufactured, then how it was distributed, different distribution channels. So for example, did it go direct to the consumer, or did it go via retailers? If it goes through retailers, then obviously the retailer will target the consumer. And obviously every company has a different type of supply chain, but all of them are involved with regards to procurement and logistics. Because for this supply chain to work, supplies are needed and they need to be bought, but also it needs to be logistically organised for everything to take place to allow the manufactured product to obviously be manufactured. So, with regards to what procurement is, procurement involves every activity involved in the obtaining of the good or service a company needs to support its daily operations. So that includes sourcing, negotiating terms, purchasing items, receiving and inspecting goods as necessary, and keeping records of all the steps in the process, and that includes the supplies that are used. So with regards to the procurement process, have a look at some of these steps. So for example, they will request the purchase and they will actually carry out the order. They'll maintain the records because obviously these suppliers will be then listed and they might use the suppliers again in the future. So everything that's involved in terms of buying the resources that are required, and those resources, they could be, for example, the components that Apple used, or it could be simply the stock that we see on the shelves in our local supermarket. It really depends on the company and the industry that they're in. But the procurement is involved in buying the stock. Whether that stock is raw materials or the finished good, they are responsible for that negotiation. So, what can procurement achieve?
Disruption is the new constant, and the world around procurement is changing at lightning speed. We envision the future of procurement as the frictionless purchase and delivery of goods and services across the business, creating a user-friendly experience. Today's environment is a perfect storm of change and opportunity. So the question is, how do you reimagine procurement and cross the divide from where you are today to where you need to be tomorrow?
This is an exciting time for procurement. Technology is advancing so fast, it's allowing us to find new and innovative sources of value. Customers are starting to compare the procurement organization to the way that they buy products and services through the different apps that they're using every day. And so there's a lot of pressure being put on the procurement organization to create something simple, intuitive, and user-friendly. Data is going to be that conduit to finding those new sources of innovation and value.
Technology will let suppliers see more of your process, giving them more opportunities to self-serve. Having access to real-time data, suppliers will be ready and able to integrate their business to your needs to be more responsive and relevant. How will this value be realized? Our catalyst is category innovation. External data sources which provide industry trends, should cost pricing, geopolitical risk monitoring, and social media reporting come together to make the category innovator the critical newly reinvented role in procurement. Internally, they receive predictive spend reporting which drives work planning and deep relationships with your best customers. Procurement will become virtually invisible to customers over time. It will digitally self-monitor, employing spend and contract analytics to prompt timely renewals, streamline processes, and identify anomalies.
So as you can see from the video, technology has been really embedded into procurement, and the advancement of technology has made procurement be even more effective. Now, an effective procurement team is absolutely essential in getting a competitive advantage. One of the reasons for that is because it helps to reduce cost by negotiation. One of the jobs of the procurement team is to negotiate with the suppliers to get the best price possible. Now, if they're better at negotiating than, for example, their rival procurement teams, so from other companies, then they will be able to get cheaper prices, which means a lower variable cost per unit. Now, if they can get a lower variable cost than their rivals, then they will be able to, or they'll be able to afford to reduce the price of that good. And if they can reduce the price of that good and sell it cheaper than their rivals, then of course that's going to give them a competitive advantage, with customers switching from their competitors to come to you. Another benefit is the efficiency it can cause, because if you can identify the most reliable and fastest of suppliers, then that should reduce any waiting time experienced by customers, giving you again another unique selling point. If, for example, you can get stock which is ever flowing, so every time it's close to selling out, stock arrives because of the reliability of your suppliers. Or, for example, maybe you've got a supplier that you can order goods from when a customer orders it, and they are so fast and they're so reliable that actually the customer's not waiting for long. That's going to give you that competitive advantage. Another one, it can ensure high quality items, because the procurement team will identify which suppliers offer the highest quality goods, and then obviously they will work with those suppliers. They'll also be able to quickly identify any suppliers that might not provide good value and high quality items, and they'll obviously delist them. The final benefit is mitigating supplier risk. So of course their job is to avoid any risk with the supplier. And all I mean by that is, for example, orders not arriving on time or orders not arriving at all. And it does relate to reliability, but there can be external shocks. There can be shocks in the economy, there can be issues that might be ongoing, there might be problems with delivery, whatever it might be, the procurement team will have a contingency plan in place, or they should, to make sure that the supply chain isn't disrupted. So, when we are looking at the supply chain and we are looking at procurement, it is also important to consider the logistics, because as I said before, the procurement team work very closely with logistics. So logistics is making sure the correct products are procured and that they will arrive when needed. So of course they work with the procurement team. Now, logistics is a vital part of any business's supply chain management because it involves three main elements: transportation, storage, and distribution. Now we also have to consider some of the issues that can be with procurement, and sometimes behaviour of firms or behaviour of the procurement teams that can harm the reputation of a company. Now, as we can see here, we've got Tesco's. Their procurement team has been accused previously of being too aggressive in their negotiation techniques. So to end this video off, I'm just going to show you some examples of some of the accusations and how it has affected them publicly.
Because these commercial income deals matter so much, the negotiations can be hard-nosed.
It is a very macho, high testosterone, kicking ass and taking names culture. That's what buying is all about.
Steve Jones trained buyers at Tesco. A buyer's job is to get the best possible deal for the supermarket. Their pay depends on hitting aggressive targets.
They get into that market because they're highly competitive and they enjoy the cut and thrust of the negotiation. That they're generally better at negotiating than the suppliers are, and that's why the retailers do as well as they do.
One former executive says buyers were expected to behave responsibly.
There was a culture of you push as hard as you can. We're there to get a maximum deal out of this, but within a level of integrity where the red line was quite clear.
Okay, I'll show you where
But for years there have been complaints from some suppliers that Tesco buyers certainly knew the meaning of the word aggressive.
But the main bulk of our stock that I'm holding now is in the shed.
What's in this shed is all that remains of Jonathan Halser's bath toy business.
All of them, Instant Bath Time Fun, Splashy Dashes and Squiddy are all here. I'll just quickly show you. For example, we have the Splashy Dashes here.
His products used to appear in hundreds of Tesco stores.
Tell us what it's like to get a deal with Tesco.
Well, it was so significant it meant having a business or not having a business. And the volumes at that time were so enormous with Tesco. They did
They're
sell.
so big.
Yes, exactly.
In 2008, the supermarket owed his business £42,000, and then a buyer called him into a meeting.
She said, we need you to forego this 42,000 in order for us to continue to be a customer of yours. I thought it was unbelievable, really. And I said, well, I can't possibly do that. I can't afford to do it. And even if I could, I wouldn't. She then warned me that if I didn't accept this, then as I go out that door, I will not be ever coming back through it.
Tesco said this has never been permitted practice, and they can't comment on the specific claim without seeing information in support of it. They say they review their suppliers periodically and can delist some, that's taking products off the shelves, if there are alternatives customers would prefer. But we've been told the threat of being delisted has been used as a tactic to make suppliers pay. One former Tesco buyer agreed to talk to us anonymously. He worked there until the mid-2000s.
Once in my experience, I delisted my best-selling line purely to bring a supplier to the negotiating table. And in that instance, making that decision brought nearly £1 million in additional income.